Hey Maarten.
Sorry, hey. Ik was je net een berichtje aan het sturen van ik zit helemaal alleen in deze kamer. Het is blijkbaar nog rustig. Zo. Ja, je kunt mij horen, toch? Ik hoor jou nou niet meer. Oh, je bent muted even. Jij bent muted, hè, Peer? Je microfoon staat uit. Ja, nu is hij aan.
Zie je een prachtige kast op de achtergrond.
Ja, en een paar schoenen zie ik.
We kunnen even kijken hoe snel dat sharen, omsharen werkt. Dan, als we niet willen.
Oh, wacht even. Ja, ik kan wel even sharen. Zal ik eens even sharen nu?
Ja, en dan pak ik het weer even over gelijk.
Ja, als het goed is het nu shared. Ik kan niet zien of dat klopt, maar daar ga ik vanuit. Kun jij mij nu ook nog zien of niet? Of zie je alleen het scherm?
Nee, ik kan jou ook zien. En ik zal zelf even sharen. Oké, als jij stopt sharen.
Ja, dat doe ik. Sorry. Ja, dat heb ik nu. Ja.
En dan ga ik sharen. Ja, het wisselen is niet helemaal ideaal natuurlijk. Hè?
Nee. Maar goed, als we het redelijk snel kunnen, dan is het ook niet erg. Oh, er is iemand anders binnen ook inmiddels.
Well, take it as we go.
Ja, precies. Oh, die e-mail staat nu op het scherm, Pier.
Ja, oké. Stop sharing.
Wat wil je doen? Wil je dat ik de presentatie doe? Of, maakt me niks uit.
Ja, begin jij en dan kunnen we altijd kijken of we gaan switchen met haar.
Ja, jij doet de intro, dan bedien ik de slides. Hey, Mark.
Yeah, that's fine.
I see Mark there as well.
Hang on a second. There we go.
Hey, it's good to
Close
see you,
the door here. Yeah, thanks for doing this. What is it? It's 11:30, so it must be about 6 in the evening there, 7?
It's 7:30, in fact, here. Yeah.
All right.
I had to arrange a babysit for my son because my wife is out jogging.
Okay. Ellen wrote to me and said she's having a snow day. So we got about 20 centimeters of snow last night, and she's in a place where there's very restricted Wi-Fi. So she will join if she can, but she doesn't expect that it's going to work. Well, I'm your host today.
Okay. Well, we have no snow here, so.
So sorry for you. It's very beautiful, actually.
I know. I think Boulder is pretty beautiful in all weathers, in fact. But yeah. That's good to see you. So actually, we decided to reach out to you guys because the original plan was for me to spend this summer in Boulder. And
I remember.
Peter was going to join me. We thought, we can do maybe something in the summer with you guys. But then, given the pandemic, we're going to postpone this to next year. And then we thought, if everything is online, we might as well do this thing online.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you doing this. It'll generate some interest around here, keep you in people's minds.
Nice.
And yeah, it's probably a wise choice not to visit this summer, not to travel. I haven't been more than 100 kilometers from my house in over a year.
No, it's the same here. Yeah. Well, at least your house is in a beautiful location. I mean, in Boulder, there's enough to do in 100 kilometers. Yeah, so that's very nice. Well, Peter and me are all set up. We'll just wait for some more people to join us. And then,
I would expect between 15 and 20 to show up. It's the time of season where everybody's feeling incredibly stressed. We're about 2 weeks away from the end of school. There's Pierre joining us from Seattle, Washington.
Nice. Welcome, Pierre.
He's still getting his audio together. Pierre started a discussion group or a salon on the topic of technology and mythology, or technology and stories.
Okay. Beautiful topic. Yeah. Very nice. So the idea is that, so Peter and me do a lot of these presentations, but generally, there's Peter again. Your mic's still muted, Peter, but I don't think you're ready to talk yet. So we do a lot of these presentations, but generally, we're in the same space. We're physically in the same space. And this is actually the first one we do where we're not physically in the same space, which is quite interesting because it leads us to some interesting questions like who's going to control the PowerPoint, the slides.
Yeah.
So we made a plan. We hope it's going to work, but we'll see. Peter, your mic is open now.
Yeah. I was just moving places because for some reason my Wi-Fi in my study started to kind of fall asleep. So I have much better Wi-Fi here.
Yeah. So Peter's in Amsterdam and I'm in Utrecht, which is what is it? 20 miles from Amsterdam or so?
Yeah, Ultima Trajectum, the final frontier of the Roman Empire.
Wow, very good. Yes, very good. Yes, I am on the final frontier. Actually, the old Rhine, it runs like 100 yards from my house here. That's the official old border. Yeah. So
Nice.
Very good, Mark. Incredible. Yeah.
So I have to tell you, I have a hard stop at 12:30. People can stay on the call. I have to go run another meeting. But generally people stay on and chat for some time afterwards. So you really have 1 hour before you see me go.
That's well, it's wonderful if you have time to be here for 1 hour. So that's perfect.
Oh, yeah.
And after that hour, I think Peter and me, since it's evening here, we have all time in the world to to hang out. I may walk to the fridge to get a beer in the meantime, but
good idea. Give your time.
Yeah.
So yeah, give them a couple more minutes. People will trickle in.
Sure. I'm gonna test my screen sharing, see if we get the right screen here.
Good idea.
You should be able to see 2 eyes and a sign that says "Bots Like You" right now. A web page.
We do.
Peter, yeah, good. Thank you. This is a web page that Peter and me maintain. It's a web page with stories and interesting things that we find interesting about robotics, and we'll tell a little bit more about it.
If you have sound, you might want to do a sound check. If you don't, then you're good.
Yeah, we did a sound check, and it is shared from the machine. Do we have any sound on this website, Peter?
Just pick a random movie, like, well, not a random one. It's very important to pick the right one, of course.
I'll Google,
I'll go for Namjoon Pike.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Okay, good.
He's under the pooping bots.
You mean really from the thingy here?
Yeah. Pooping bots.
Wait a minute. Was he?
Yeah, K456.
Yep, there he is. But do we have a sound clip of him?
I think there's a movie at the bottom. There we go. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, sorry.
Very good.
I'm hearing sound. And I'm seeing his robot walking down the streets of New York.
Manhattan.
Very nice.
I love robots like this.
I love Namjoon Pike.
Yeah. There was a big exhibition in Amsterdam in the Stedelijk Museum. It's a beautiful museum in Amsterdam. And they have a history of basically kinetic art and media art like Namjoon Pike. And it's quite interesting. Was last year, was it, Peter?
Yep.
Yeah. Actually, just a funny anecdote. I had a weird thing happening there. I was visiting the exhibition and it had already been open for 2 weeks. And I noticed that some of the signs for the artworks were misplaced. They had like such a few signs that were talking about the wrong artwork. So I informed one of the people in the, one of the guards in the room, saying, you may want to have someone check this out because they're wrong. And I continued my walk through the museum and through the exhibition. And someone came after me, one of the organizers, and said, "Oh, sir, are you the one who complained about our exhibition?" I said, no, it's not a complaint at all. It's just a constructive, insight, something I noticed. And they were quite stressed.
Sensitivities, yeah.
Yeah, so I took them, showed them the signs that this sign describes the work actually on the other side of the room and vice versa. And so it's quite, there was quite a lot of stress at that moment among them.
They probably didn't mix up TV Buddha with Radio Garden.
No.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I guess not. Mark,
why don't we get started? And I'm not going to do much of an introduction because you can do that for yourselves. But
fine.
We're here with Maarten and Peter, who are here from the Netherlands. So they're 7 hours ahead of us in time zone, or 8 or something like that. I can't do the math in my head. Time zones are actually really difficult. It's one of the more interesting research studies I want to do, is why are time zones so difficult? But that's a distraction. Maarten showed up in Boulder a couple of years ago in the summer, having spent some time here as a child. and is interested in staying connected with us at the ATLAS Institute in Boulder. They together are part of a really interesting place at Leiden University in the Netherlands, and they're here to talk about bots like you.
Thank you, Peter. Peter, thank you, Mark. Peter, you're going to start. Let me share a screen again. Just a moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, first I'll share it and then I'll start the PowerPoint. Just give me a minute. Not a minute, sorry, a moment. Better. There you go.
Awesome. All right. So yeah, and well, we're calling in from the Netherlands, but obviously, if you go to the next slide, indeed, you know, there's a further connection between the Netherlands and Boulder and surroundings. So you see a nice picture of us two here with Maarten's son in Netherlands, just around the corner. But we're not here to talk about, well, the beautiful sites around Boulder. We're going to talk about robots. And the first cliche image that maybe comes into mind, and when people think about robots, it's something like, oh, robots that take over the world. But despite, yeah, this is a fairly kind of cliche topic in a way, you know, the whole utopia, dystopia around robots. And we'd like to move away a little bit from this classical divide. Also, you could say that, you know, if fear, obviously, it's understandable that the fear of humans not being longer in control, that explains partially maybe our interest in robots, because fear sells at the end of the day. But it's not just fear, you know. If it was just fear, it would die out as a meme real quick. And we're also fascinated by AI. And why are we fascinated by AI? You go to the next one.
Sorry. Yeah.
It's because we're fascinated in a way with ourselves, right? So we're fascinated with the mirror image that these robots, that these artificial creatures give us of us and who we are and what makes us human. And ultimately, it's you know, a fascination with ourselves, and it's not just, you know, this. Yeah, almost narcissistic feeling that would sound a little bit too negative. Ultimately, these questions of what makes us human, what is emotion, what is creativity, what is jealousy, what is humor. These are questions that have been, you know, bothering our minds for centuries. But what we would like to do here today, we're going to talk about robots or artificial creatures in general. And we're going to use this lens a little bit around what it is, what makes us human. And given that we are a bit of geeks and nerds, we like structure. We like structure a lot. So we tend to want to categorize things into classes. So what we brought here is we're going to do a little bit of a whirlwind tour of various types of robots, but as a starting point, we don't take the robot as a starting point. We actually take more these characteristics of what make us human as a starting point. So we'll go into curiosity, creativity, but we'll also go into some other categories of things that make us human, and we'll give you examples of different types of robots and artificial creatures made by researchers, made by students, made by artists, to kind of illustrate to illustrate those characteristics. Yeah, so because they can make us laugh, they can make us think, they can make us wonder. Basically, they can inspire us and to think a little bit more about who we are as a species. And the first category we're going to talk about is curiosity, and Maarten is going to talk about it, and also about why this is an interesting characteristic to discuss. So Maarten,
thank you, Peter. I hope you can hear me, because while I share my screen, I cannot neither see me or you, or even see whether my mic is muted, but that shouldn't be a problem. So indeed, Peter, me like categorizing stuff, and curious robots is one of the things that we fascinated us. And because when we think of robots, we generally see them, as goal-driven things. They're very determined, they're very rational machines. And even if they explore any or exhibit any exploration, then it's still very functional exploration, to maybe map out a physical environment or something. And but curiosity is a different type. It's like, it's where exploration becomes the primary purpose, really, of a robot that is curious. And we like all examples. And what you see here is SAM, Sound Activated Mobile, by Edward Ignatovich. It was shown at the Cybernetic Serendipity exhibition in 1968 in London. And it was actually the first artwork that interacted with people by really, focusing on the interaction, focusing on these people, following them around. Basically, it would react to sound, not per se. It would not per se react to the more as the sound got louder. So it would also appreciate soft sounds, and it made the work into a fine balance, the interaction into a fine balance, where people really started to play with the machine and investigate types of interaction that they could get with it. And it was very much observed by people or experienced as a curious machine that was interested in what was going on around it. And the same Edward Ignatovich, who's a hero of Peter and me, we'll see many heroes of us, also made this machine, this sensor. And this it was made in Holland, in the Netherlands, in our country, in the Evelon Museum. It's an old technology museum that doesn't exist anymore, but Peter and me visited it a lot as children. And it's this contraption that you see here. It's kind of like a giraffe. It's the crossing between a shrimp and a giraffe, and some scaffolding, I guess. And but it's an interactive work as well. And it basically does more or less the same as the Sound Activated Mobile. It would also react to sounds, plus it had radar on board. So it would also, observe basically physical objects in front of it, like people. And it was exhibited in a museum, and it's also very, because it has such a bare bones visuals, really all the focus goes into the interaction, which makes the work very very nice to interact with, and a very interesting work that really had its place in both the cybernetic art and basically art history. Interestingly enough, this machine was commissioned by the Philips electronics factory, from the electronics company from Holland. And after the exhibition closed, the machine actually was brought back to the company that welded it, and they left it somewhere out in the field. And it was later found by students from the Art University in Warsaw, I think, or in Krakow. And they actually brought the sensor to them back home, because Edward Ignatovich was of Polish origin. And they actually restored it, and it can now be seen, I think, in the art school in Krakow, if I'm not mistaken. Here you see it at the Biennale. The WRO Biennale. So the machine has actually been made, or the artwork has been made back into what it is. And this is a famous example of a machine, just like sound activated machine SAM, that exhibits this curiosity to what's going on around it. But this curiosity can have different forms, and it can also be very intimate. And an example of that is work by Louis-Philippe Demers. And it's called The Blind Robot. And basically, it's a robot that cannot see, but does want to explore and interact with the people in front of it. And it does so basically, as you can see here, by touching the face of someone who's in front of it. It's a very intimate experience to have a robot basically explore you, exhibit its curiosity via physically, touching your face and moving over you. And it's really a way for Jean-Philippe to use curiosity as a way to explore how these very intimate interactions with robots that may be part of our future, when we have robots that dress us, maybe, or things like that, how that could be experienced, what it could mean, etc. And when we look closer to home, to the base of our own students, we see works also from our own students that also explore robotic curiosity. One work was by a student, Sabrina Verhagen, in 2015, and basically she made a small robot, quite a relatively simple robot, that she placed on a city square, and it would basically interact in a very simple way with people around it. It would observe someone in front, react to that, but her interest was not so much in what the robot could do, but what the people would do. So what the people did is what she studied. So she placed the camera there and observed carefully the types of interactions that people would go into. And I'm not sure where in this video that occurs, but a funny anecdote here is that there was a lady who, an elderly lady who spent quite some time talking to the robot, to the device, that kind of interacted with her just by moving around her a little bit. And at a certain moment, here's the lady. Sabrina was a little bit worried that the lady might need help, so she contacted her and she told her, you realize it's a robot? And the lady said, yeah, of course I realize it's a robot. It's just like talking to it. And she was scuffed away basically by this lady. So this is also a work by one of our own students that explores, what it can mean when we encounter curious robots. But one of the, I find the most fascinating examples, I really like the blind robot that I just showed you, but another one is also by a colleague of ours, by Rob Saunders and Peter Gemeinbück. And you may know it, it's called Accomplice. And before I show you the video, imagine this, you walk into a gallery, a typical, museum gallery, a white cubic space, and in the walls, so behind the walls of the gallery lives a colony of robots. And these robots, they know the space where they live, which is behind the plasterboard, but they're interested in the space that we inhabit, where we people spend our time. So, but the only way for them to explore it is to basically make holes in the wall to see us. The robots using their little torches. Oh!
You need to stop the video because we couldn't hear you while the video was playing.
Can you still hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine.
Good. I just pressed the wrong button.
This is also the part where we're doing these presentations more often, and sometimes in these conferences, and you can people, maybe just, getting a little bit distracted and dozing away. And then we put in the video, we always ask the production people to put the volume up to 11,
yeah,
just to wake everyone up.
So basically the work is about this colony of robots that wants, I don't know if you could hear me earlier, but about this colony of robots that wants to explore our side of the world, and they knock these holes in. And it's a very confronting encounter that we have with robots that are curious about our world. And again, this work shows also an aspect of curiosity, meaning, namely, that we are willing to actually change our world. A robot, if we are, so can robots, to actually see what's going on. And if robots start changing our world out of curiosity, that will have implications for us. And I think this is a beautiful work by our colleague Rob Saunders and Peter Gemeinbück that really, it explains this very nicely. If we move on through the categories that we want to take you through, this was curious robots. The next one is about creativity, creative robots. And Peter, are you ready to tell a little bit about creative robots?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. Sure.
All right. So creative robots. Yeah, like of course creativity. Yeah, it's again, why is it interesting? Of course, it's one of these things. If you would ask random people, like what sets us apart from machines, right? Then creativity is one of the first things that actually comes up. So, but that actually makes it interesting as well to look in the robotic mirror image and to study ourselves through the lens of creative robots. Now, let me show you some examples. The first one is almost like, even though it's a very cool project, it's in the context of this talk almost like an anti-example. What you see here is Dragan Ilic, Serbian artist. And basically the robot here, it's about role reversal. Yeah, that's the interesting thing about the work. It's rather than us creating stuff and let the robot quote do it. Here, like the idea is that we are just a tool of the robot in the robot's creative kind of making process. Yeah. It was also, I think you have a quick movie as well, Maarten, where we can maybe run it.
Oh, sorry.
It was also something that was shown at Yeah, it's not working.
Yeah, it should start the video. Ah, there it is.
There we go. For instance, at Ars Electronica. But the thing about this work, it looks really impressive, of course. I think it's a great work, but in the context of our presentation, doesn't teach us very much about creativity. Actually, it was a little bit of Wizard of Oz here, because there was a guy sitting behind a curtain controlling the robots. Yeah? So, it didn't tell us that much about creativity as a process. So if we look at some other example that maybe doesn't really look very interesting for robot technicians, for us it's a lot more interesting, and that's the cyclograveur by Jean Tinguely. You could almost call this a cyber, well, an artwork that is where I can't, what's it called again? Half robot, half human, cyborg, right? So it's almost like a cyborg project here, because ultimately the idea is that you get on the bike. Nowadays in museums, they don't let you do that anymore, but you could get on the bike and you would cycle, and out would come a painting. And the interesting question here is, okay, yeah, who is the real artist, right? Is it the person who's riding the bike, because he's providing the energy, but that person has no idea how that actually results in that particular artwork? Yeah, or is it the machine that cannot operate without a human actually driving it? So for us, there was already, let's say a cyborg that led to a lot more interesting questions than the previous one with, say, the traditional robot. But let's look at some other examples as well. So another old example here is CISP-1 by Chauffeur from the 1950s. And CISP was a robotic artwork or cybernetic artwork. Actually, it wasn't even an artwork. It was more like a platform, because CISP here was also called a homeostat on wheels, and it could interact with the audience. So the idea was that you could have different contexts within which you could place CISP, and it would behave differently. So the previous context was a gallery, but this particular context that you see here, CISP is dancing, performing with two dancers. And the whole idea behind it, how it worked, was a very common pattern that we see in these kind of robotic artworks of a thermostat or a homeostat on wheels. So the system has certain behavioral drives. For example, CISP doesn't like too much light, and it does like darker places. So it will orient itself to lighter places. It doesn't like loud sounds, so it will shy away from loud sounds, and it will look for silence, or the other way around. And it doesn't like cold or warm colors. So by putting it into that environment where it has these senses, sound, color, light, dark, and it has certain actuators, it can turn, it can drive. And you put it in an environment where its balance is continuously disturbed, you get an interesting interaction with the environment. And because there's a lot of structure in the environment, the people in the gallery space or the ballet dancers performing with the robot will seemingly start to behave in an interesting way. Yeah, so this also shows like systems thinking, in the sense that it's not about this piece itself, but the piece in its environment, and how does it operate in that particular environment. Yeah, and what you see here, this is in a picture. Went to an exposition in the Grand Palais in Paris, Artistes Robots, and there you could actually see the actual artwork. One of our colleagues actually went to the workshop. So even though Chauffeur is no longer there, the workshop, he was able to visit it. But here you can see it also in the exhibition. And just to pull out some other work from this exhibition is a lovely work by Arcangelo Sasalino with the ominous title Untitled, and that you see here. And this, we have it here in the kind of in the creative section. It's this, how do you call it? An excavator, a little bit, something that's on the end of an excavator normally. And it's about destruction, right? So it's an interesting creative robot because it turns creation on its head, and it says, like, how can we create if we don't destruct? And this is a robot that slowly, grinds its environment, its own environment to pieces. So it's an interesting, it's a metaphor. Well, not a metaphor. It's actually doing creation by destruction. All right. So, and I think this is the final example in the creative category, if I'm not mistaken. Another French example by actually some of the people behind the reflective interaction team at the NSAT lab at NSAT in Paris. And what they are working with, they provide toolkits and tools for people to build all kinds of robotic artworks. Could be visual, it could be performance art. And this falls more into this kind of second category. And this is an actual play that was performed by robots. And these robots, they have been designed in such a way that they're imprecise. So the kit that the methods that they build and the kits that they make, they are on purpose imprecise rather than perfect. And that actually makes it interesting. And what you see here, the play starts. You see some people coming on stage. They had to do it because of trade union requirements that they couldn't get subsidy for the play if there were no actors. So that's the only role for the actors. They come on stage for 10 seconds and they put a couple of robots down. And what we see now is a very precise, mechanistic, completely aligned choreography that has been kind of programmed into those robots. However, these robots are built in an imprecise manner, and they also have Velcro tape around them, and you see these little balls that are on the stage as well. So sometimes for one of those poor robots, one of these Velcro balls will actually stick to it. And the interesting thing is that by virtue of these robots being imprecise and starting to, it all starts when at the beginning they're all synchronous in motion, and then during the play, it starts to diverge more and more. And also when you look at it, you can't help but projecting intentions, emotions on these objects here, or try to see meaning in these type of things. I mean, there's a lot of famous experiments by psychologists as well, like Harder and Seymour, that showed that you could have simple abstract objects and people, and you create a little, comic movie out of it, people will project meaning on it, right? So I think this was an interesting work that is actually exploiting the imperfection in robotics to create interesting performances. So they didn't just show up in the first 10 seconds, they also show up at the final 10 seconds. And at least now they got the subsidy for their play. So that's interesting. All right, but it's time for another category. I think the first two categories were curiosity and creativity. So they were very much categories where, I don't know, robots in a way, were designed to be good at something. But here you can see we're flipping it around. It's a little bit, it's a nice bridge actually from the last example that I showed, because that was about imprecise robots, robots that are not good at something that makes it more interesting. And helplessness in that sense is an extension of that particular tactic or strategy. So, Maarten, take it away.
I'll say a little bit about helpless robots. I love this artwork, by the way. I think it's at the University of Alabama, if I'm not mistaken. It's called Golding 1971, and it's just a beautiful helpless robot made that refers to the mining history of the region there. There's a very famous helpless robot that most of you, we presume, have heard about, and that's Paro. Paro is the robotic seal. Basically helplessness of the seal, it needs to be cared for, it needs to be pampered, it needs to be sung to, it needs to be talked to, it needs to be fed by other people. It can do very little by itself in functional terms. And this is a way of exploiting helplessness for therapeutic purpose. Well, so if Paro exploits helplessness in a robot in a functional way to achieve a goal that we humans have, then we find it actually more interesting to look at robots, particularly old robots, because we love those, that exploit helplessness, or maybe not even exploit it, more explore it from an artistic perspective. And the famous one is actually called The Helpless Robot by Norman White. It was let's say, an artwork in transition. It doesn't have a particular date that you can fix to it. As you can see here, it's labeled 1987 to 2002. And what it is, it's actually a contraption that we not normally associate with a robot, but it would sit in a museum or in a gallery or in some exhibition space, and it would vocalize, it would speak to exhibitors when they would come in and ask the visitors to help the robot. The robot had some intention, it would want to go maybe to another room, and it would ask the visitors for help. You can see a lady here that actually grabs the handles, and the robot asks her to pull him or them to another room. And but the robot also had Norman White built certain personalities in there. Something he referred himself to as an artificial personality, and that meant that if the robot thought it wasn't helped fast enough, maybe you dragged it along too slow in its opinion, it would start getting a little bit, unpleasant. It would start vocalizing its frustration, maybe actually being arrogant, or it would exhibit boredom, like to people. So it was an interesting way for Norman White to explore what it means if we encounter helpless robots that, are maybe not, maybe exhibit traits that we have as humans as well, namely arrogance, frustration, boredom. And I think it's a beautiful artwork, and certainly on the topic of helpless robots. Another famous one you probably have heard of, maybe not, but it's this robot. It's called Hitchbot, and it was made by two researchers from Canada, 2014. What you see here is actually, it's a paint bucket, and it has some, I think Americans call them noodles for some weird reason. These things you can use in a pool, and it's dressed up with some rubber gloves and some children boots. It has some electronics in its head through which it can, I think it can vocalize, actually, it can speak, but it can also show faces on a little LED display. It has some very basic communication skills, or communication capabilities, is a better word. And basically it would hitch, as you can see here, along the road, waiting for people to bring it along in their car. And if you look carefully, actually, in this image, you see that it sits in one of these child booster seats that you can just put in your car, plug it into the cigarette lighter, or the electricity jack of your car, and you could take it along, bring it along. And this is a method for the two researchers, Frauke Zeller and David Harris Smith, to actually investigate to what degree are we willing to, interact or even help a helpless robot. And it hitchhiked through Canada for quite a while in 2014. I think also in 2014, it actually went to Holland. You see here on the left, someone put it on some Dutch wooden shoes, and orange is our national color, so it has our national hat, apparently, that we wear during soccer matches. After that, it went to the US, as you can see, and the researchers decided to actually give it an additional layer of intentions in the form of a bucket list. Hitchbot actually had a bucket list with it. It wanted to see the lights in Times Square, or go to Vegas, or, I don't know, take a selfie with the Hollywood sign, or stand under the Gateway Arch in Missouri. So, these are ways for the researchers to actually explore, as I said, explore what it means, again, just like the helpless robot, but in a different way, more in our natural life, to bring along a robot on our journeys. And Americans are apparently very hospitable people, because they brought it here to San Francisco in a car with children. Someone brought it on a boat ride, even to a baseball game. But then in 2015, it was August 1st, the Canadian researchers lost contact with HitchBot. It had a simple phone-based GPS system and connection. And at a certain moment, they stopped working, and they didn't know where HitchBot was. So they could see its last position, the last known position of HitchBot, which was somewhere in Philadelphia. And they called the University in Philadelphia and asked some researchers, could you please check out this location, see if HitchBot is there. And when the researchers found the location that the Canadian researchers gave them, they found HitchBot decapitated along the side of the road. So, actually, it's me telling you this, but it's Peter's words, who always says that a good experiment should have room to fail. And so in that sense, you could imagine this is a good experiment. Also in other senses, but according to this falsification theory, you could say it's, in a way, it's falsified. Not really, of course. But, this whole concept of helplessness. So we've seen Paro that exploits it in a functional way. We've seen works that explore it, such as the helpless robot, HitchBot. But helplessness has even been used as a way to measure how we see robots, simply how we see, what do we see as a robot? And that was done in a famous experiment that was proposed in 1999 by Freedom Baird. I think she was a student at MIT. And it was such an elegant experiment that she actually performed it later, in 2006, if I'm not mistaken. And in this experiment, she asked children to hold upside down a Furby, one of these, robotic electronic toys. And when you hold a Furby upside down, apparently, it's what I've learned, is it starts screaming, it starts objecting to being held upside down. And what Freedom would do, she would basically time how long are children willing to keep the Furby upside down, even under its protest. And she did the same thing with a Barbie doll, one of these like lifeless dolls, and an actual hamster, a living hamster. So children were asked also to carefully hold the hamster upside down. And she would time how long children were willing to keep these three creatures upside down. And she showed that the Barbie was not a problem. The children had no problem holding a Barbie upside down. The hamster, they would reverse it back up very quickly, which is very good. And the Furby was actually in between. And this shows us, in a way, it exploits the concept of helplessness to measure to what degree we are willing to accept this helplessness, or this emotion, or this thing as an actual creature. I think this is a very elegant experiment that I really like. When we move back into the frame of artworks, there's a famous artwork that Peter can tell you more about than I can, and it's by Jordan Wolfson. It's called Man and Glove. Peter, do you want to talk to us about Man and Glove? I hope you're still there. Uh-oh.
You're muted.
Yeah, Peter, could it be that you're muted?
I'm back again. Sorry.
Okay. I cannot see you guys, so I couldn't really see whether or not you were muted. But
you should be able to see us. But anyway,
somehow due to screen sharing.
Don't worry, computers. You love them. You love them or you hate them, or probably both.
They love us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Jordan Wolfson, I think he's New York-based artist. I saw his work. He had two works in the Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam, actually. And so you see his first work here, and it's a puppet. And well, whilst we do like low tech, we already explained, we showed whatever Tinguely and those other artworks. This doesn't really fall into the category of low tech because you can see here the puppet, and the puppet is a toddler, right? So, and the toddler, it's a slightly, well, almost like sadist installation, because you can see that the puppet here is up in chains and he's being dragged through the space. There's some soulful music in the background, which provides a lot of contrast with this rather grim installation. And there's one kind of tiny detail that people maybe don't realize kind of really explicitly, But the eyes of the puppet, they're kind of little, actually little displays. And what happens is you're standing there around the installation. This little toddler is, schlepped through the space, but he will, every now and then, he will look someone in the face, right? And then he's dragged along, and he keeps kind of tracking you, and then he looks at someone else, right? So, and it's a very kind of subliminal thing that makes you feel kind of an immediate connection with the robot. Yeah, Maarten, if you take the rightmost picture, yeah, there's actually kind of some footage here of the poor guy being swept through the space. And this, of course, this cries out helplessness. This is slow, but then, like it's actually the installation is varying, of course, with the movements. Well, we give it a bit of time. We have the time. Let's let it roll. And I also really like, I don't know if people notice, but you see these chains. Why are these chains so thick? They don't need to be that thick. We could have made invisible lines, right? Or they could have been much smaller. That puppet weighs next to nothing. I guess now you know why he's using these chains, right? So there's the sound of it, and all right. Well, let's relieve him from his suffering here. I think it shows that these can also be works to kind of to explore the somewhat darker sides of our souls. Why not? I think the helpless robot that Maarten started with, the installation that wants to be helped and then starts to complain the moment you help it, is another good example. Okay, but let's move into the final category, and that's religious robots. So, and of course, there was already a remark here on when we say curious robots, do we mean that they're really curious, that they're really creative, that they're really religious? Of course not. We're not making any ontological claims. It's all about us. Like for us, these robots, these creatures are mirror images of us, and they make us think. They give us an experience, and they make us think about ourselves, or they make us laugh about ourselves. They may help us understand a little bit more about ourselves, or they may actually make us understand what we don't understand and what we shouldn't talk about, to quote a famous Austrian philosopher. So when we talk about religious robots, what can robots teach us about religion? Of course, there's an interesting tension here, in the sense that, well, you have these kind of more natural kind of, these kind of more spiritual, older religions, where we were all one with nature. Yeah. So, and these very old religions where we are one with nature, it's not strange to subjectify, a tree, but maybe also a volcano or a rock or a river. We're part of nature. We're not the masters of nature. We are parts of it. But then actually our society changed, right? So we became farmers, and we became city dwellers. And also that meant that the religions that started to evolve, they got a different focus. They got a focus where man was the master of nature, right? So we were controlling nature in a way. And of course, when you look at the Abrahamic religions, we are being created in God's image. But in a way, you could also argue, and this might be sensitive, so I don't mean this in any wrong ways. By the way, I'm completely fine with anyone should be able to believe whatever they want. This is not, religion is not meant to be a science. But just to exaggerate a little bit, imago Dei, so God created man in his image, is also, you could also argue it's almost an arrogant way to say, well, then God must be a little bit like us, and we're the master. If God is the master of the universe, then we are kind of his dependents who are the master of the universe. So from that, if you follow that line of reasoning, then robots are competing with us in this Abrahamic worldview. Yeah, and there have been. So if I explore that angle a little bit, there have been kind of different types of research where people looked at, like, what is the perception of robots with people with different religious backgrounds. There have been psychologists who also they were showing different types of robots to different people, and believe it or not, psychologists have a skill for everything. So there's also a skill for religious fundamentalism, right? But they study this here in the context of I believe, a Christian university, right? Where there is a negative correlation between religious fundamentalism and the eeriness, or the eeriness, or that you associate. Well, that's a positive correlation with the eeriness of a robot. And a negative one with the warmth, right? So this would argue indeed for that hypothesis that the robots are competing with us. So if you're more from this particular background, it doesn't gel really well with your worldview. Yeah. Now, but that's fairly one-dimensional view of the world. I think in reality it's much richer, because let me take a very old example. And that's an example from the 16th century. And it's an automaton of a friar that you see here. If you go to the Smithsonian, it's still there. This automaton was commissioned by Philip II. So Philip II, he was the king of Spain, and Spain was a large part of Europe at the time. And almost the impromptu, he was not a pope, but a very important kind of Catholic emperor. And he made his robot actually to thank the friar that it kind of represents. You can see here, it can do Holy Marys, it can kiss, the robot can kiss its crucifix. And what happened was that Philip II, his son, I think it was something like he fell down a flight of stairs or something, hit his head, his brain swelled. So he turned very, very sick. From a very healthy young kid, 70-year-old, he turned very sick, and he was about to die, and he was getting these visions of a friar that lived 100 years ago. So what do? You start to pray to the friar, to ask for your prayers to be heard. And lo and behold, the swelling disappeared, and the prince recovered. And then to thank the friar, Philip II actually made his automaton, right? So, and that's a fairly kind of well-documented story. Most of it is probably true. There's some wilder theories as well, that they dug up the corpse of the friar and put it in bed next to the prince, right? So those are some of the less confirmed stories around it. But he got better. But there's an interesting dimension to it from the perspective of what can we learn from this? Because there could have been an ulterior motive here for Philip II. You see here, it's 1562. He's the leader of the Catholic world. And well, what's the big thing at the moment then is, of course, the rise of Protestantism, right? So, and one of the major kind of reasons for Protestantism to evolve was this kind of this idea that religion is something that's really very personal, It's from your own personal experience, your own personal values, and they didn't want to have nothing of this. I'll confess, I'm a Catholic, but they wanted to have nothing of this whole circus of rituals and you sin and then you just pay for one of these receipts for a priest and you're absolved. Yeah. So that was one of the things that let's say, to simplify, the Protestants wanted to get rid of, and there was a bigger discussion behind it that was already happening for hundreds of years in the church, and that was like, what is the meaning of a ritual? Can a ritual work? For the ritual to work, does the person that actually executes the ritual, doesn't matter who actually performs the ritual, right? So a good example would be, I'm dying, so I get the last sacrament, right? So from the priest, so that I can go to heaven. But let's say that we'll go to the previous one, Maarten. Let's say, so I get the last sacrament, but let's say that priest has like 3 girlfriends and actually never went to seminary, right? So will I still go to heaven? Yeah, and that was a big philosophical debate or a theological debate that Thomas of Aquino, for example, he thought about it, and he came to the conclusion. He said, like, ex opere operato, which means that the power of the work is in the work itself. That the power of the ritual is in the ritual itself. Not we're just stardust, right? So a priest is just stardust. Who are we to question the strength of the ritual itself? And so the ulterior motive that Philip II may have had with this robot is to teach all his followers a little bit of a lesson. You may think that a robot that's praying or kissing its crucifix doesn't carry any weight, but who are we? The power is in the ritual, not in the person that who is doing the ritual. Maybe even if it's a robot, it could even work. Yeah. So interesting background story to this robot. Yeah. Okay. But like I said, it's very one-dimensional sometimes to talk about these things like this, because on the next slide, indeed, you see another robot that was built by actually the Protestant church, right? So this was not, these were not some artists that were trying to make fun of it or whatever. This was built by people who were hosting a Protestant convention in Germany, and they built this blessing robot, bless you too. You could say some prayers with the robot. On purpose, you can see that they built like in a very low-tech way. But of course, what they are questioning with this is indeed it's this same thing. Like what does a prayer mean, right? So and is it important? Could it work in a, let's say, in a mechanistic context? Of course, we also have our meditation apps and whatever, and we have no issue using those, right? So it's an interesting thought. Now you see it in other religions as well, like you see here a Buddhist monk that's living in a temple near Beijing, actually 100 kilometers from Beijing. First started as a manga character to evangelize, right? So and now you can see they turn it into a robot. And there's of course a long tradition of using these representatives of saints or forefather figures, or as tools in rituals as well as tools for spreading the gospel. And here you see another example it's a company in Japan where you can actually rent a pepper to assist in funerals, right? So normally there would be a priest, so it's not replacing the priest, but the priest would always have some helpers. And with this Japanese company, one of the helpers actually gets replaced by a pepper to help with the funeral or other types of ceremonies. Okay, so this is the use. This was very much around robots in rituals, but of course there are other aspects to religion as well. And I think religion gives us kind of answers to the meaning of life, or the big life questions. And the biggest question of life, of course, is about death and mourning. So I have two projects around this here. One is this project by Etsuko Ichihara. And let's roll a little movie, and then I'll tell a little bit more about it.
生き返った。1ヶ月ぶりの明日は。なんかこうやっぱりね、足が地面についてるって素晴らしいですね。
いや、体ないって結構いいよ。でもね、体あるってのも結構捨てがたい。やっぱ行ったり来たりできるといいよね。
こういう感じなんだ。いや、悪くない。
Yeah, so what you see, there's a little bit of like it's very hard for us to deal with the fact that someone dies and suddenly away, right? So it's a very binary situation, and it really doesn't compute. So and apparently in this particular strand of Zen Buddhism, there's this period in between when people are not completely gone yet, right? So by using Pepper here as a representative in that period, and then it helps us to well with actually coming to terms with the fact that after this 49th day then that person really dies. But we get a little bit more extra time. It's buying some extra time here, almost like in the 7 stages of grief. We get a little bit of negotiation time to coming to terms with that departure.
Talking about time, Peter, we need to hurry up a little bit.
Yeah, that's fine. All right, so final example. Let me see, do I want to do this one, or do I want to do the, well, let's move on beyond this one. So a final example here is a little bit about spirituality. This was a project by a student of ours as well, and it's called Deep Meaning. If you go to the next slide, then you can see that, actually it generates...
in this hidden sense of consciousness has to be rebellion.
This is going into the spirituality kind of direction, but we train it on a lot of self-help literature. So it's kind of producing a lot of these texts on the fly that you can read many different things in, right? So, and we're just interested in how people kind of interact, reading meaning in pretty much meaningless text. All right, so with that, let's wrap up.
Yeah, I'll wrap up here. So, so we've shown you a lot of examples of robots that we find interesting, and during discussing these robots, we talked a lot already about why we tell you this. We think that looking at robots in the ways as artists do, as we explained, or as some researchers do, teaches us not only a lot about ourselves, it does teach us a lot about ourselves, also a lot about our relation to robots and what it could mean, but also it shows us a way that is different from a technical perspective on robots. Very often I notice that robots are very often, people in first instance, they approach it very much from a technical perspective in their dealings with robots. And there's, of course, there's many other ways. And of course, there's the whole field of human robot interaction, et cetera, et cetera. But the examples that we showed you generally look at underlying mechanisms or underlying features or human qualities that play an odd role in the life of robots or in the communication of robots and ourselves. And actually, this whole project about looking at robots like this came from a project that Peter and me did. It's more like a lunchtime project, something that one day at the university over lunch, we started talking about robots and what we like. And it turned out we like the same things about robots. We like, odd or examples that teach us something that we may not have expected of robots. And we collected these in a website called Bots Like You. We have, as we said, we're nerds and we like to categorize stuff. So apart from emotional robots and creative, useless, helpless, there's many more categories that you don't see here on the screen. But we go into the whole topic of metabolism and robots and religion, of course, as we talked about. We invite you to look up this website, look us up if you want to. If you're in Leiden, feel free to come by. Coffee's on us, of course. When we're in Boulder, which is probably next year, and I think we have an image here on Pawnee Pass in Colorado of the two of us hiking 2 years ago. But if you're in Holland and when we're in Boulder, it may be nice to get together. And if you want to discuss any one of these topics with us, feel free to do so. We're going to be here to answer any questions if you want. So I'm going to stop this slide sharing because then I can finally see you guys.
Yeah, we're at the top of the hour, so I completely understand because we ran a bit over that if you have to that you have to run, but thanks for the opportunity, and we'll stick around for anyone who wants to chat a bit more and ask questions and whatnot.
Oh, are there any questions in the chat, Peter, that we can pick up?
Yeah, I already did.
See.
Like, so does anyone have anyone who is still here or wants to stick around, wants to discuss something? Then feel free to just open your mic. And of course, feel free to drop if you have to go.
Well, we're already very proud that you guys actually stuck around for a full hour. That's quite fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
Peter, I'm going to check quickly to see in the chat if there's anything that we can, let's see. It's always difficult to go through an old chat or when it's not created at that moment. I see something about Tamagotchis. Let's see, Pierre apparently has a question.
We're always interested also if you have some nice examples, just send them to us. We're always interested to see interesting examples of unconventional robots.
Yeah, there's a question here about Pierre, Peter, and it's do you distinguish between curiosity as a motivation and behavior, which appears like curiosity to a human?
Yeah, like I kind of answered it a couple of lines down.
Oh, sorry about that.
In the sense that we don't make any ontological claims, right? So we talk about religious robots or curious robots, but we don't imply that they're curious or creative or religious. So it's more about what do we project on these creatures, and then ultimately, that you can see that work instantly within seconds in an installation, but it's also what kind of thoughts linger on later on then when people think about it.
So, feel free to ask questions. We're just going to hang around here.
So I have another example to share if no one has any questions. So yeah, I gave the example about humans curious with virtual humans or robots. I had another example about misbehaving robots that you had in your slide there. And so it's actually done with virtual human. We wanted to run an experiment where we wanted to see if the personality of the virtual human would affect how the human interacted with that virtual human. And so we actually had as you would expect, like if you're interacting with someone from customer service and they're being very rude or angry to you, you don't want to interact with them anymore. So we were kind of basing our hypothesis on that if the virtual human would be angry or kind of mean, or you wouldn't want to interact with that virtual human like you would in the real world. Well, so we set up the virtual human to be mean or angry, and then another virtual human was very friendly and nice. And in a way, it was kind of a failed experiment, but at the same time not, because we learned a lot about how people interact with these characters. And what happened was people who were interacting with the mean or angry virtual human wanted to interact with them long periods of time. They wanted to see just how angry they could get that virtual human to be. And the one who was nice and friendly was kind of boring, so they didn't really want to interact with that virtual human. So it was kind of interesting.
I think that's a great result. We see that more often that, I don't know, yeah, like this helpless robots was also a little bit of a bickering robot. And then if you started to, first it's like, can I have some help? And then you would help it, and then it would start to become nasty at you. And then people actually like, you know, they like if there's variety in that sense. And on the flip side, people like to be abusive towards robots, right? So I don't know if you remember, like this, the robot that was on the square, it started with little kids and they were playing with the robots, similar, you know, but they were really teasing it, you know? So like what you would see is there would be, I don't know, like two kids would walk up to the robot so that the robot would back off, but there would be another kid behind it so that the robot couldn't get away. And so the robot would go to the back and then, ooh, look around, ooh, I can't leave. And then they would, anywhere where the robot would want to move, they would jump in front of it. You probably recognize this teasing behavior that people can have. And you know, like, in a sense, like people, love to be abusive to to robots too.
And it also reminds me of a project that some of my students did. What they did is they went to the Lubner Award. Do you know Lubner Award? It's one of these Turing test competitions. And to enter the Lubner Award, you have to make your code publicly available. So that means that a lot of chatbots are publicly available, good chatbots. And what these students did is just take a collection of well-known chatbots and just have them converse one-on-one in different constellations. And it turned out that Jabberwocky, that at that time the most, let's say, advanced chatbot, would always become very aggressive towards other chatbots, you know, without reason. And if it talked to an actual human, it would not. But as soon as you had it talk to Jabberwocky, talk to another chatbot, it would simply become really aggressive and verbally aggressive, which was an incredibly weird result that we found with something almost like inherent aggression in a robot, in this case, a chatbot, but nonetheless, very odd thing. Hey, Ran, nice to see that you're still here. You also proposed a cool work. I'm gonna share my screen for a moment so you guys can see, where's that again? There it is. I'm
a robot lover. I'm so happy.
You should be able to see my screen now, and
oh wow!
And this is a really interesting robot. It was made at the Berlin University of Arts by students. Peter and me love student projects always, and it's very much also. It also here it was shown at the Ars Electronica.
Yeah.
Do you know, Ran? Do you know what I'm going to say? I was looking at this and I thought, oh, I know a robot. I've seen a robot just like this at Ars Electronica, but now I see here, it's the same one that I saw. We go to Ars Electronica every year with our own students, and
cool. I can only see the video and I find, oh, that's so cool. This one, it's like, it's a little naughty and you know has some personality there, and
very cool example. Thank you very much.
Yeah, there's also a version what is it, with a lamp, or am I not confused with the movie? No, I think there's a Media Lab project as well with a lamp that behaves a bit like this.
Oh, is that the one by Guy Hoffman?
With the movie now, I don't know. I've seen too much Pixar. Yeah.
I should know that one. And actually, I believe most of the Guy Hoffman's work are like have some like naughty and animation like robots. Yeah. And also Wendy Drew, she made some like trash bin and like observe the trash bin and like the robot trash bin that interact with the students that in the like when they're taking like in the they're taking dinner or somewhere. Just like so many weird studies for observing humans' behaviors when interact with robots.
There's so much weird research. Thank you very much for reference, by the way, talking about research about robots. Amy in the chat just posted a reference, and I completely agree with you, Ran, that there is so much incredibly interesting stuff to explore in this respect. and
Yeah,
we love doing that.
the robot lamp is called Luminar. And so what is it? Yeah,
Luminar.
yeah. But I see now a version, but I've also seen another version. This one looks a little bit useful, i.e. slightly boring, but
That's
Yeah, I love
useful.
useless
But
robots.
you
We
say
should have a
useless.
category of
Here it is.
useless robots.
Yeah.
Silly robots.
We love useless and
the
silly
other one,
robots.
AUR.
Yeah.
Do you know this competition in Japan, Hebocon? It's a competition who can make the crappiest robot, and it's very interesting to see what happens there, because it kind of also explores the line of what are we willing to call a robot. You know, is a tissue box with a few pencils sticking out that move? Is that a robot or not? And so it's a really interesting concept to explore questions like that in these odd ways by organizing a competition for who can make the crappiest robot. And I think that's incredibly interesting. It's called the Hebocon. I'll type in the chat.
I just
Yeah,
posted
sure.
the MIT MIT lamp in the chat.
Oh,
Okay, cool.
I've seen that
Good.
one.
So the Hebocon competition is something you can, if you Google it, you'll find it. Some beautiful videos of what people make. Oh yeah, that's the.
You might be interested in my robots.
What is your robot?
Silly robots. You can check it. I send it to the chat.
Cool. Pat Me robot. Nice.
That's my first robot. That's how I get involved into robots. Yeah, like currently I'm doing like haptic robots.
Oh,
So
nice. It's to heal
Nice.
loneliness.
It's really cool. Very nice.
very
nice.
like student work, very raw prototype.
Student works are really our
Yeah.
favorites. And
Those are the
actually,
best.
Ghana, I have to say, you made a beautiful webpage about it as well. It's really, really good documentation. It
I
really
like
lifts the project.
it's
It's very
very
cool.
but also doing stuff with, like this tactile stuff.
Yeah, like we currently create robot that can touch human and communicate their emotions to humans solely by touch. And that's our
Very nice.
research topic.
Nice. Cool. So are both of you students in the ATLAS Institute, in the ATLAS program, or
Yeah,
in
I'm a
Boulder?
PhD student. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Nice. What about you, Amy?
Students and professors.
I collaborate with folks at the ATLAS Institute. I'm actually a professor at the University of Wyoming. We're very close in distance, and so enables me to engage with a lot of the really great students and faculty there.
Nice. So you're now in Wyoming, I guess.
Yes.
Ah, cool. Very nice. I love this about these video things that people can be anywhere actually.
Yeah, actually I'm in New York now. I'm the first semester PhD student, so I have not moved to Boulder yet.
I've not moved to Boulder yet. That'll come later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my master is the Parsons, so it's like our school. We always do like silly stuff with no reason.
Well, silly stuff doesn't need a reason.
You mentioned when these kind of tactile stuff. Another one that we like, it's also on our website, is the tickling bots. I put it in the chat as well.
Yeah, I'll show it on screen
I've
share as
never
well.
seen that one.
It's in the misbehaving category, Peter, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Let me see. Oh, where is it? This one? Yeah. Do you guys know how many robots actually smoke cigarettes? That's scary if you know how many.
What?
Yeah, there are a lot of smoking robots. These are tickling
Oh,
robots.
wow.
I've actually, both Peter and me have actually experienced them in an exhibition. They actually, see, they drive over your skin,
Oh.
and some hang on threads. And they're Dutch, from a Dutch designer artist collective. Yeah. And
So interesting.
beautiful things. Yeah. See if there are any other ones.
Do
here.
want to like create robot that can like climb on human body, or even like fly in the sky and always around you and maybe sit on your shoulder somehow. Yeah.
Very cool. Like a parakeet robot. This one actually is suspended from strings, and it tickles you. It just explores your body by tickling.
That's so cool.
Beautiful, isn't it?
It's a fake one, right? It's like it get hand with some strings. It's not really climb on you.
It's a really cool project. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have that one in the category of misbehaving robots. Here's the smoking robots. There's a lot, and particularly the older ones.
The
See,
Westinghouse robots.
yeah, was that Electro? That's this one, right? It's beautiful. They offer it a cigarette,
Fake,
and
of
then
course. A guy in a suit, but anyway.
it's a very odd robot. But you'd be surprised how many robots actually smoke cigarettes. It's really unbelievable.
Why? Why people do that?
Yeah, that's
looks
because
cool?
yeah, at a certain time. So this robot's from 1939 World Fair. Let's see, where does it get offered?
It's not a very
cigarette?
politically correct robot, Maarten.
No, I know.
But
No.
that's why it's in the naughty category, yeah.
That's why it's in New York, Peter. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, see,
so
here's
cool.
been offered a cigarette.
Oh, yeah, offer a cigarette. There we go.
And this is the funny thing is, this is what people enjoyed most about this weird robot, is that it could actually smoke. How
It's more like
strange
a
is that?
human. Is that the case?
Yeah. People thought this was the pinnacle of being human, is if you could actually smoke a cigarette. I think it's not going to light up the cigarette. It's really weird. Yeah. People do weird stuff with robots.
So funny. Do you know Dan Chen? He's somehow the best like robot designer I like the best. Like I try to find him.
I don't. The name doesn't
You mean,
trigger.
is that the guy in China?
No, he's currently in Facebook. He also graduated from Media Lab. So.
Okay.
He made many like his robot all about death. That intimates relationship with him.
Dan K. Chen, yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
Cool. Wow. Yeah.
Team spirit generator. High five.
Some very interesting robots when I Google him now. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the best is the Friends kids. His most like famous stuff might be the final kill, like the last, just for like really ill person or like elder person kill, those stuff.
Hey, what type of stuff do you work on? If you're still there.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you were talking to Anju.
Yeah,
Yeah, so mostly I work with 3D user interfaces and interaction. A lot of the virtual human stuff was done with group members in my research lab when I was a graduate student. And it just made me think about, the similarities robots have with virtual humans and that sort of thing. And it's just kind of going back to your other question, what makes it a robot? Is it that it has similarities of being a human, but not necessarily artificial intelligence? Yeah. Does artificial intelligence make it a robot? And thank you for your talk, because it's making me think about some of these things, especially in relation to not just robots, but virtual humans. Typically virtual humans might have a little bit of AI, but maybe it doesn't have to. Maybe if it's
not at all.
Task.
Yeah, I fully agree. Like the most interesting, you can see, like I think people, mistake inside out or outside in. Like what people are projecting on these things is way more interesting whether you are running a deep neural net or not inside. It's like.
In that sense, I think these experiments by Hydra and Simmel in the 1940s that Peter talked about in his talk today, where they show these really basic. Let me see if I can find the Hydra and Simmel video quickly here for you. I think here it is. It's amazing. It's also because it's old and we like old stuff. But basically, these researchers in 1944, Hydra and Simmel, they showed people these animations for a few minutes, and then they asked them, okay, now explain to us, just tell us what did you see? And people use all these human terms like, oh, the little triangle was scared of the big triangle, and then the small circle and the small triangle, they collaborated, but they made the big one really angry, and they talked this really, talking about these intentions and these feelings and emotions, but when you look at it dryly, it's just a bunch of geometric shapes. And what I find really interesting about this research is not often told about it, but they had another group of people watch the same film, but it was played in reverse, backwards. So basically the narrative, if there was any narrative in there, it became lost. And interestingly, these people also, described what they saw in these really terms of intention and emotion. I think that's incredibly cool research by Hide and Simmel already, very long ago. Yeah, very seminal research. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like the claimants you have today, like the curiosity of the robots. Like doesn't mean that they are really have that kind of sense. It's just like it's a mirror of ourselves,
Yeah,
and
exactly,
it's more about what how we reflect on those, like the robot's behavior. Yeah, that's kind of like the concept I have. So like I would never like try to persuade humans that my robots have emotion. You can feel it has some emotion. That's enough, right? But still need to find some scenario to make it make sense. But actually, like after all, we all get the idea.
Yeah. Nice.
And
hey,
have you
joined us,
ever? Sorry, have you ever heard about the Japanese? They designed a funeral for their robots.
Yeah, the IBO,
Yeah. I think that can also be put into
place.
the funeral section, and it's like a different direction. I really interested in how like humans treat their robots, the attachments, and how it happens.
Yeah, that funeral home for IBOs basically, or what is it? I don't know where
it's a graveyard, like mass funeral for like 400, 500 IBOs.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because in that case the robot takes a completely different role in the concept of religion that we talked about earlier. Really, here it's subject to it's basically the subject of religion, and I think that's very interesting.
I just had a student, and he had a project with couch. Well, it was about how do people bond with robots a little bit, and the idea was like, you can have something that looks like an animal or human appearance, right? Or there can be certain interaction that entices people to bond with the robot. But we said like, no, we want to have minimal interaction and minimal appearance. So he created, and then because our thing we wanted to see, a third factor was common locus. So the mere fact that you're spending space and time with an artifact, there needs to be some minimal thing that will let you decide that you want to subjectify the object. Yeah, but after that, it's just spending space and time with that creature will mean that you will start to bond with it, right? What he did, he built little cube-shaped robots. The only thing they had was a smiley face, and it was minimal behavior because at night it would close its eyes. In the morning, it would open it up. So that was the only behavior. And that smiley face was the only thing that had any form of appearance. For the rest, it was just cubes. And there was a little sign on the back that said like, I want to spend it was a couch surfing robot. So I would say, I want to spend some time with you. And when you're sick of me, just give me to someone else. And every now and then send a WhatsApp, send a text to this phone number on the back, just to let my parents know how I'm doing. So, and he released them. He built like 3-4 of them and just released them into the world. And then he would get, like WhatsApp updates, all the things that people were doing, like putting the robot to bed and giving it food, taking it out, taking it to work. And so we got all this feedback. And then, of course, we kind of made it pseudo-scientific. So we categorized it, like, are people projecting emotion? Are they projecting intention? Are they taking, if you take the robot with you, that means that you're trying to retain that common locus as well. And so we kind of categorized a bit, what these people were doing. There was also a relationship in the sense that if you want to keep the robot with you, then you project a lot more. It's not causation, it's correlation, but anyway. It was fun. It was a little bit like HBot, but then without any of the people knowing that they were actually, part of an experiment.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, we always try to design robots like robots, not anything else. Yeah, even like no one know what the robot should be look like.
No. Yeah. Boom. Alrighty.
Yeah, I'm also
We're
gonna.
gonna have some food. Thanks very much for your hanging
Thank
around.
you.
It's already
so
late at
nice
night
to
here in
talk.
Europe, but hey,
Oh.
we also hope you guys are good in these safe and healthy in these weird Corona times, and wish you, of course, all the best. And
Thank you.
we're going to be, Peter and me are going to be in Boulder, so not this summer, but summer 2022. So if you guys are in
cool.
Boulder then, and if you want to have a beer,
Maybe
beers are all
by
on
then
us.
you
Maybe
have
all
moved
beers are on us.
from New York to Boulder. Yeah.
Well, you're going to move to Boulder anyway. And come on, Wyoming's
Amy,
not that
yeah,
far
maybe,
away,
yeah.
Amy.
Well,
No, just let me
make a
know. I'll
little
come
hop.
down.
Yeah, we need to come down to you. Yeah.
we,
Make a
we,
little hop.
we always love drinking beer with colleagues and students. And so when we're in Boulder, next summer, so in a year from now, please. And if you're in Europe in the meantime, feel free to drop by in Holland. And,
I guess
visit
my
us.
advisor will go back to Austria very soon. My advisor is Daniel Leidinger. Do you
Daniel?
know him? Yeah.
The-
The one who built like a shape display table. It's not robotic stuff.
Ah, yeah. Nice,
Yeah.
nice. So
But
he's
he's
going back
super
to,
cute.
to Austria? He's
Yeah,
from
he's
Austria, right?
he's
The
from
ta-
Austria.
you're saying the table?
Yeah, like Daniel Leidinger and Shaun Former, like the media lab, tangible media group stuff.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
So like this reactable also, this table or not? Or the shape?
It's just it's interactable. It's called Inform and like quite famous stuff, but super expensive.
Cool. Hey, I'm gonna check out your website further later, but I wish you all the best, Ran. Thank you very much.
Thank
And,
you.
hope
So
to see you
nice
sometime
to
somewhere.
see you.
Bye bye.
Yeah.
Thank you for being
I want
here.
to try a robot actually. So, like the wearable one.
That would be very cool.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Doei.
Bye.
Gaan we
Nou.
even kijken, Peter. Moeten we nu de meeting?
Nou, wij kunnen er gewoon uit wanneer
Ja,
we
en ik kan hier end meeting for all. Hey, kom maar, ik stuur je even een jitsi op de WhatsApp. Is dat goed? Via WhatsApp stuur ik je een jitsi. Zie je zo?